I just wanted to comment that this illustration of you has slightly more hair than you currently have. I just didn't.
Well, you know, I usually do my interviews on the radio where I still have my hair.
So, Alan, it is an honor and a privilege to be on this stage with you.
As it is for me with you.
No, please.
Oh,
you are media royalty, television royalty, acting royalty, with a career that goes so far back, that's touched so many of our lives. And I, as a scientist, I'm going to take sort of a science angle in my lens to you. So that's my privilege as host.
Great.
With your permission.
I'll be glad to tell you about all my discoveries.
So I have to know, you're native to the area, right? You're homegrown New Yorker?
I was born in Manhattan on 32nd Street and 3rd Avenue.
Okay. Like,
First time I ever got a hand for being born.
Was there a hospital there or something? Or you were just
No,
born
I
in the
was
street?
born at home.
At home?
Yeah.
Okay. Whoa. That still works out.
Well, that's where my mother was.
And so, in K through 12, did you have any particular science influences, a good or a bad experience with a math teacher or a science teacher?
Well, I got polio when I was 7. Ooh. And so after that, I had to have a tutor for a while, and my parents kept me tutored until the 7th grade. And I had a teacher I didn't like too much. This isn't scientific, except for the fact one day I was drawing a nude figure for the pleasure of the person next to me. And
for the person next to him, yes. That's who the nude figure was. And he wrestled it
out of my hand, and I was really pissed at that, you know. So when April Fool came around, April Fool's Day, I prepared him a sandwich to eat, and luckily my goldfish had just died. So I put the goldfish between 2 slices of Wonder Bread and gave him a snack. I didn't expect him to actually eat it. I thought he'd lift it up and look at it and say, "Oh, April Fool." But he put it in his mouth and bit on it. And now I'm looking at him, and he's got this tail hanging out of his mouth. And I thought, I got to tell him before he swallows that. And then I remembered the picture, and I thought, screw him.
So this was kind of like a science experiment.
It really was.
What to do with a dead goldfish. Yeah.
But I did do experiments as a kid. You know, when I was 6 years old, I had a card table where I would mix things. I'd mix my mother's toothpaste, my mother's face powder and toothpaste to see if I could get it to blow up.
Wait, did you then put it either back in the toothpaste tube or back in the powder tube?
No, but I once opened up her watch to see how it worked inside, what made the hands go around. And I couldn't get the case back on, so I bit it.
To try to squeeze it back together.
Squeeze it back together, and I left tooth marks so she knew who did it. So I was a good scientist, but not a good criminal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think regardless of what the results of an experiment turn out to be, what matters is the curiosity that led to it, which clearly you're exhibiting.
Whichever way it goes, isn't this right, as a scientist, whether it goes the way you hoped it would or not, you've made some progress along some path, and you've kept your curiosity alive.
Exactly what any good child does and any good scientist does.
Isn't it funny how children are natural scientists, and then they seem to lose some curiosity, or at least a way to exercise it?
We beat it out of them.
How? What do you think? What kind of thing does it?
I said this. We spend the first year of their life teaching them to walk and talk, and the rest of their lives telling them to shut up and sit down.
That sitting down and facing the teacher doesn't seem like the best arrangement.
This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying.
I had a biology teacher in high school who said to the class, recent studies, he didn't even say studies, we know now, he said, that when you cry, you release toxins. So it's good to cry. So I thought, well, that's interesting. And I raised my hand and I said, does it work the other way? Does something positive happen to you when you laugh? And his answer was, please, try to be serious. I was. And it turned out 20 or 30 years later, they found some value in laughing.
Yeah. So you were just smarter than your teacher. That's it.
I'm sorry to say that's the way it's always been.
Okay. So if you had this curiosity, was there some fork in the road where you say, I could be an actor or I could be a scientist?
No, never, no. I was lucky enough to go, I followed my nose, and what I seemed to be good at, I tried to do more of. Although it's a little crazy for an out-of-work actor. I went 9 or 10 years, and we were married and had 3 children, and I still wasn't making a living acting. But I knew it was for me somehow.
Well, that's how you know it's love.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Just keep at it.
Yeah, you do it because you love it, not because,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, what do they say? Pick something you would do for free and make it your career, and you'll never live
Never
a
have
depressed...
to work a day in your
You
life.
never have to work a day or live a depressed day of your life.
Yeah, well, you can be depressed about your work.
Okay. I'm
Let's not
just
go too-
reciting what I had heard.
Let's not go too far.
You went to college?
I went to Fordham College.
Okay.
Spent my junior year in Paris, which was
Fordham in the
wonderful.
house, someone...
Somebody from Fordham in the house?
Yeah.
Well, hello. And
what'd you major in?
I majored in English, but they wouldn't let you graduate with a BA degree in those days unless you were a student of Greek and Latin, both. So I got a Bachelor of Science in Social Sciences.
Okay.
Not actually studying any social science.
All right. And so did you know yet that you had a path to Hollywood and to...
I didn't know I had a path anywhere. I just knew I wanted to. You know what? I figured out early on that I wanted to act with people I respected in material I loved in front of an audience that got it. And that's all I wanted. It didn't matter to me where that would be or how much money I'd make doing it, as long as I could earn a living.
That's a very pure goal.
Well, I really felt that way. And then I wound up doing that for 11 years on MASH, and it was a wonderful experience.
I have to ask, if I remember correctly, it was Donald Sutherland was that character in the film MASH.
Right.
And was he invited to do the TV?
I don't know.
And you don't care?
He probably thought, what, me, television?
Back then, yeah, there was this divide
There
between
was a
the two.
divide. It was, and yet some renowned people came out of television. Clint Eastwood was a television actor.
Right.
And, but there was a stigma attached to it. But I just wanted to act, and I wanted to do stuff I cared about. And that was clear from the beginning that it was really good stuff.
Now, in MASH, that was the first war where the helicopter was used in any meaningful way, but the helicopter was not yet perfected as an instrument of weaponry. So,
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so it was used in the case of MASH primarily to airlift injured soldiers. Was there a self-awareness that this was like the first time helicopters mattered in warfare?
No, it's the first time I heard it
Oh, okay.
from you.
From me, like
Yeah.
right here and now.
Yeah. What else can you tell me about me?
No,
No,
but
really,
just think
what
about
was
it.
it all about? Tell me about
I'll tell you. No, I'll just spend a minute on it. So,
The first
we'll get-
teacher I ever had who was smarter than me.
we'll get right back to him. So, consider that the Wright brothers invent an airplane, a non-glider airplane in 1903, and helicopters are not really useful things for another 50 years as they were developed in the Korean War. And it's a testament to how hard it is to make something that flies that
Without wings.
Without wings. That's exactly right.
And yet Leonardo had a model of it.
He had a model. He didn't know enough physics, excuse me. Physics had not yet been discovered
Right.
for him to have properly designed his version of a helicopter.
But he had some idea that it might be possible.
Something would have to turn and it would have to be able to push air down
Yeah.
and lift it up. So he was most of the way there. But you needed some more physics of rotation and this sort of thing. So,
You know something interesting about wings?
What's that?
I want to ask you this question, because I bet you know.
and then we have to get back to me interviewing you, okay? That's why they came.
The
But, all
thing
right.
about a wing,
Yeah.
it's supposed to be what lifts the wing is the air going over the rounded surface goes faster or slower than the air under.
Faster.
Yeah, it was going so. Yet, every time I'm at an airport, I'm checking the wings. they're all at a slight angle. So that gives it a little lift too.
Yes.
It's the combination of both things.
Yes, it is. So in other words, if nothing else were going on, and you just had horizontal wings with the air had to travel a longer distance above than below, that air moves faster than below, and fast-moving air has lower pressure.
Right. So
So there's higher pressure underneath, and you get lift.
lifts it up.
But if you take the airplane and take your tail flaps and lift them up, that'll press the tail downward, lift up the wings, so now your wings are exposed, and now that'll just lift you like that. That's how the plane can go horizontally down the runway, and then just decide to go up.
I hate when it does that.
Right? It's not like, it didn't just sort of slowly do this.
Right.
It says, it is time to go airborne. Up's the flap, bam, and now you get maximal lift. And it's also how,
Yes.
you got me started here. It's also how a plane, right, an airplane can fly upside down.
Get out.
Yeah, okay. So even with this Bernoulli effect wanting to do the opposite, if it angles its wings strongly enough against the direction it's going, it'll provide more lift than the downward force than that the
You just
Bernoulli.
don't want to land that way.
Yeah, you don't want to land that way. Right. There was a movie about that. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
So ask me another question.
I'm getting. So all right. So you have some scientific baptism in your curiosity in school.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we fast forward to 1993, and someone was born in 1993.
No, I think the guy next to her just got fresh. What are you yelling at?
Well, that's what we're about to find out. So we fast forward to 1993. MASH is long in the rearview mirror. You've already had some great movies in your, in your portfolio, and so you get a phone call from PBS.
Yeah, well, it was the producers of Scientific American Frontiers.
Frontiers.
Yeah. And now, the reason I was interested in doing it was twofold. I had read, since I was in my early
Doing
20s
it to host this show.
Oh, right, I'm sorry, to host Scientific American Frontiers. And it interested me because I had read practically every article in Scientific American since my early 20s.
You're subscribed.
Oh,
Those
yeah.
are not easy articles to get through.
No, I know, and at first I couldn't figure out what they were saying. And I just little by little learned the lingo from comparing one to another. And I had a general knowledge of it, enough to excite my curiosity.
Wait, who does this?
Well, I was just curious. You know how I got an interest in science, reading science, was the way humanity got into modern science. I recapitulated the human journey. I was interested as a very young man in spiritualism and mental telepathy, and I read hundreds of books on the subject and did experiments and tried to see what. And I was reading a book that was supposed to be. The story was that it had been dictated by a man who was dead 200 years already to a living person through a medium. And he said, this is how matter is made. It's made of 3 constituent parts. Ask any physicist. Now, oddly enough, this was when Murray Gell-Mann was figuring out quarks, a threefold theory that he started with. But I said, I don't recognize this, but there's a physicist who lives across the street. I'll ask him. I said, does this make sense to you? And he said, I don't know. I haven't heard of anything like that. So then I said, well, I'll look in Scientific American. They ought to know. And I started reading every article, and then I was introduced to this whole new way of thinking.
A universe of thought, a universe of inquiry.
Based on evidence, based on observation, keeping track assiduously of your observations and applying the whole method to it of checking it out, objecting to your own theories first before anybody else gets a chance to, and accepting the efforts of others to try to replicate with all of this stuff. It was a new thing to me. And I gave up what I thought was lacking in evidence, and I got excited by this quest that science was on to understand how the universe works and how they could understand the deepest things with the tiniest bit of information they could extrapolate, but not in a crazy way, not just making things up, not science fiction, but scientific evidence. And it was just so exciting to me. And I wanted to share that with people, but I wanted to know more. So when they offered me the program, Scientific American Frontiers, I said, yeah, but you probably want me just to read a narration. I want to interview them and talk to them and learn from them all day long while we're roaming around their labs.
And they said, uh-oh.
Yeah, well, they took a real chance on me because they didn't know if I could do it. I had been an improviser, and I'd taken over talk shows a couple of times as a guest host, so I thought I have no problem with this. Then I did it. Wasn't easy. The first time I'd made some terrible mistakes.
By the way, this whole book is first-person narrative of everything this man has done to figure out how to be a better communicator. And so it's delightful reading. I feel like I'm on his couch and he's just telling stories, you know, just one after the other. So please retell this, how you first got in trouble in the lab.
Well, this scientist had made a solar panel that would power a car in a race for electric cars. And
Early days of electric cars.
Yeah,
it was 1993.
yeah, it was always on the frontier. And so I went in and started talking to him, and I started off by thinking I knew more than I did, which is a terrible mistake. And I said, gee, it's just wonderful that you made this solar panel just using devices right off the shelf like that. He said, they're not off the shelf, I made them.
Strike one.
Yes, right, that's right. And I wasn't listening. The biggest mistake I was making was I wasn't listening to him and I wasn't reading his face. You'll notice the title of the book.
Yes, yes. Uh-huh.
But I have this look on my face. He had a look on his face, but I wasn't noticing it. It was the biggest error I was making because I could see, later when I thought about it, he was troubled that I was assuming things that weren't true. But I tried to relax and be comfortable with his work, and I sort of put my hand on his solar panel and said, this is wonderful. He said, don't put your hand there.
Strike two.
You're going to destroy that thing. And then I would ask him a question, and he would tell me the answer to my question, and I wouldn't really listen to the answer. So my next question didn't come out of what he said. It came out of what I thought I ought to ask him next. So we didn't really have a conversation.
You were ships passing in the night.
Right. And I learned an awful lot from that experience. And from then on...
And they didn't fire you, though?
No, but we talked a little bit.
Uh-huh.
But what finally happened on the show is we did something that's not usually done on that kind of a show. These weren't conventional interviews. I didn't go in with a list of questions. I went in just with curiosity and my own natural ignorance. And I had plenty of that to go around. Curiosity plus ignorance, I think, is a good combination.
That's a brilliant combination, yes.
And you got to know that you don't know.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. But that led to just a conversational approach. And if I didn't understand them, I didn't pretend I did. I just kept after them until I got it. And that changed them. That made them look at me in a personal way. The tone of voice became personal. The language they used, the terms they were using were not technical terms anymore because they had to make me understand. So there was one scientist.
Sure they weren't thinking, how do I get this guy out of here as fast as I can? Let me try hard to get him to understand.
They would sweat bullets. They'd think, you don't get it yet? That's not it? Okay, because we had, we shot a lot of stuff and then cut it down to where I looked like I got it an hour sooner. But one scientist was wonderful. She was really wonderful and conversational with me. And then she remembered that this was just like a lecture she gave. And she turned away from me and looked into the camera and started lecturing the camera. And her tone of voice changed completely. It wasn't personal anymore. The vocabulary changed. I couldn't understand what she was saying. So I coaxed her back with questions. She came back to me. And then we got warm again, and it was conversational. And then she turned back toward the camera. So that was a real lesson that if we don't make this contact and really observe each other, let the other person in, it's not going to lead to something lifelike happening. It won't be alive.
You come to this as an actor where you've got to sell this character that was written for you.
Yeah.
It's not you, it's something else. And,
right.
and so I was struck by something which is retrospectively obvious now that you lay it out, but to see it for the first time, it's like, whoa.
What was that?
It's when there's a script, and somebody says something, and now it's your turn to deliver a line.
Right.
And you don't deliver the line. Then you would not be acting. You said it best in here. What's the term
I
you
can
use?
remember what I said. I remember what the guy said who told me. No,
Yeah.
This is really what I go through on the stage, and I think most actors do. You don't say your line because it's in the script.
Right, right.
It is in the script and you remember it, but you say it because the other guy does something or says something that makes you say it.
Compels you for that to be the only thing that belongs in that moment.
Exactly, and the energy that comes out of that, the way it just came out of you because you were finishing my sentence and you were reacting to what I just said, that energy is real. It's not mechanical, whereas if I said to myself, now I'm going to be very energized when I say this line, and I get very and it sounds like somebody's talking into a garbage can somewhere. Whereas if I really let myself respond to you, my performance exists in your eyes. It comes out of what's coming from you. If I let myself be changed by you. And that got me interested in the idea. It's a little radical. Maybe not everybody can go for this. That I don't think we're really listening unless we're willing to be changed by the other person.
So some part of you has to be susceptible.
Yeah, that doesn't mean you're going to change, but you're willing to change. If it really is something that strikes you, that really hits you. But if you say, this person doesn't know anything, this person doesn't believe what I believe, I'm going to let them finish talking, and then I'm going to tell them the real story.
That's not communicating.
Not communicating, it's not listening, it's just waiting for your turn. It's dueling monologues.
That's all that is happening in television, talk shows, news talk shows
A lot,
today.
yeah.
Dueling monologues. I love that phrase. I, for myself, distinguish facing a chalkboard, a whiteboard, whatever they have today.
I have never seen a whiteboard. I only know from chalkboards.
So if I face a chalkboard and I'm delivering a lecture, the expectation is that you're going to meet me at the chalkboard. This is not a contract where I'm somehow meeting you halfway. But if I'm otherwise facing you and I see your body language and your eyes, your eyebrows, then I want to respond to that. Otherwise, I cannot claim credit as a communicator. And so you're taking these acting lessons and you made a whole institute out of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
The Center
it's the
for
same thing you go through. That's how you communicate. That's what you do. You talk to them in a personal tone.
But you studied the mechanics of that.
Well,
I kind of stumbled on some of it, and I do it. I'm like, hey,
that explains it.
That explains it. And so you have the Center for Science.
It's the Alan Alda Center for Communicating Science.
What a coincidence! It has your name on it.
I know.
What are the chances of that?
It didn't originally have the name didn't originally include
It could only
mine.
have your name on it, given what its mission is, because it's targeting people who are becoming scientists.
Yeah.
And I know in my field, it'd be great if many more could communicate, and I'm sure many more would like to, but in science, we do not get points for that.
No.
In fact, they're demerits.
I even hear from some scientists that what used to be called the Sagan effect is still sometimes happening. The Sagan effect was, as you know better than anybody, Carl Sagan, when Cosmos was such a big hit, was derided as therefore not being a serious scientist.
Right. Meanwhile, he had more than 100 peer-reviewed research papers. So that effect was mostly jealousy, I think, and there's some other sort of dynamics to that.
There might be something in this. Pardon me for interrupting. Go
It's
ahead.
New York. You don't pardon for interrupting.
Yeah.
You just bust in
Yeah.
If you don't interrupt, I don't think you're paying attention. How you like that? Where's the chapter on that one?
That's funny. I have no idea what I was going to say now. I'm only in the moment. You know. I can't remember what we did after that. But what were we talking about? By the way, which one are you?
So, you speak of a dark empathy in here.
Yeah.
What is when I think dark, I think of dark matter, dark, black holes.
It's a little like dark energy.
A little like dark energy. What is that?
In the same way that dark energy is the opposite of gravity, and gravity's pulling us in to some cozy connection, and dark energy's pushing us apart to more distance. It's a little like that.
Against the wishes of gravity.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the reason I called it dark energy, empathy, is that a lot of people consider empathy to be the same thing as sympathy or commiseration, to be on the side of the other person doing good. Some people have said the more empathy you have, the better a person you are. I don't think so. I think it's a tool, and it can be used in a good way or a not so good way. It's an essential tool, I think, for communication, because you've got to know what's going on in the other person's head to communicate with them. How do I know if I try to explain something complicated to you, how much you know about it already? Where can I start? Can I start with more complicated ideas and processes and terms? Or do I need to start way back earlier? And I have to get a sense of that from you. It's know your audience, but know your audience in real depth and in real time. It's a more refined version of that. However, it's a tool for good communication, but it's also a tool for working against people. For instance, bullies know what you're feeling, and they can twist your feelings and make you hurt. And they do it because they can read you pretty well. They know just how far to go.
Are you saying bullies would make good psychologists? Is this what you're saying?
Well, some may be, I don't know. Don't they take a lot of pleasure in saying, "I'm sorry, your time is up now"? Don't tell me that's just tossed off. But an interrogator or a torturer, but just a plain interrogator, has to know what you're feeling to make you say what he wants you to say. Although empathy doesn't make you automatically a better person, you can use it to do the good things you want to do, but you might not otherwise do it. For instance, because this doesn't just apply to scientists and doctors, although we've taught 8,000 of them around the country and around the world. Thank you very much. Thank you. We began to realize that it applies to everybody, especially when one scientist said to her, "This training has saved my marriage."
So this is not. So the Alan Alda Center for Science Communication should be the Alan Alda Center for Communication.
Well, I started a company to raise money for the center called the Alda Communication Training Company. The acronym is ACT, A-C-T, ACT. You got to go like that when you say ACT. So we just today had a workshop for women in business, which was really exciting. And you could see people getting transformed to be able to use the things about communication that make you more confident, make you able to defend yourself against the barriers that show up. And
especially since guys are assholes. So you need.
We didn't teach that part.
Oh, you didn't teach that part?
No, we didn't get into biology. So,
yeah, no, in the workplace, you know,
so
that needs help.
It's a profit-making company because we go to corporations and train, but all the profits go to the Center for Communicating Science. It's like the Paul Newman model. Instead of selling spaghetti sauce, we sell empathy. But so here's an example that's like in a marriage, right? Guy is up late. It's after midnight. His wife's already in bed. And he notices there's a huge pile of dishes in the sink. And he thinks, I guess I ought to do something about that. What are the odds that he'll do something? Not so great. But maybe if he uses a little empathy and he says, what's my wife going to feel like when she wakes up tomorrow and sees those dishes in the sink? And he actually connects with her feeling of dismay. Chances are he might wash the dishes, and chances are he might find out doing the dishes is foreplay.
That's a whole other book right there. A book of kitchen foreplay. That's what that is. Unlike most actors, you have a particularly acute sense of comedic timing and comedic sensibilities. And personally, I have found that when people smile, I think they're more eager to learn. And that must have been something very
Well,
important.
that's an interesting thing you said. Would you go into that a little more? What do you mean by that?
Who's interviewing? Would you let me interview you? What?
Well, I'm curious. Why do you say when they smile, what gives you that impression? That's an interesting thing to say.
I found that if something makes you smile, you come back for more of that because you enjoy the feeling of having smile.
That's good. That's great.
You seek more.
I have a similar feeling that when we're laughing, we're vulnerable. We're seldom more open and vulnerable than when we're laughing. And I think, and I've interviewed some science teachers, professors, especially one I talked to when I was writing the book, who said he feels his secret weapon is humor. When he gets them laughing, they're more absorbent.
Absorbent?
You know, for the information.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I mean, empirically, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's your experience.
Yeah, oh, definitely, definitely. Yeah. And it happens that I find the universe to be a hilarious place. So
that's funny. I'm really glad I'm stuck on Earth because to me, stars and supernovas and all that stuff out there, they are fiery cauldrons of destruction as far as I'm concerned.
Indeed they are.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't want to go to Mars. I don't want to go no place. I want to stay right here.
So you want to go to Mars if one of those asteroids is headed towards Earth?
No, I want you to get something to push it out of the way.
Okay.
What the hell are you good for?
I'll get top people to work on it.
Yeah, please.
So let me ask you something, though. In the sciences, especially the physical sciences, until I read more about the autism spectrum, and at the time, Asperger's, I think, was something you could be diagnosed with, until I had read those symptoms, it was just 10% of my colleagues were just not social, all right? And you try to teach them, and nothing worked. So you'll just give up, put them in the lab, and just let them write their papers. But you knew not to put them in front of the public. But they were still highly productive.
Yeah.
Later, I learned that their symptoms exactly match what you find on the autism spectrum. And I'm happy to report that certainly in the physical sciences, or at least in the sciences that don't involve human interaction as a fundamental part of doing it, we can still have highly productive people who are drawn from the autism spectrum, where in other professions it might not work out. What I'm asking is, can these methods help people trying to work with those with autism?
Yeah, and in terms of the population you talked about altogether, in terms of scientists, a lot of scientists get a bad rap because they're considered to be not outgoing enough to entertain an audience or to get an audience engaged. And what we do is teach scientists to improvise before we teach anything else. And we keep those exercises, those improv exercises, very basic. And the whole purpose is to get them to be able to engage another person, to get that experience that we were describing before, being on stage and getting something from the person you're working with, the way we're doing right now. And we teach them these exercises that enable them to turn that into an experience with an audience, where they're talking to the audience as if they're really there, which they, of course, are. Now, so
what a concept.
Yeah,
They're
well,
actually
they're
out
actually
there.
there. Yeah. On the other hand, often people are so scared about talking to others, they talk over their heads, so they won't be frightened. The funny thing is, when you connect with people, you're not frightened. It's a wonderful experience to connect with them.
Beautiful thing.
So, this is very interesting. You brought up autistic people on the spectrum. In the course of doing the book, I interviewed a psychologist whose name is Matthew Lerner.
By the way, 80% of this book are your accounts of interviews you've had with people.
Yeah, smart
you're just
people.
bouncing around everybody's lab.
Yeah.
How come you never came to my lab? Every other scientist in the world is mentioned in here. I'm just saying.
I did come to your lab while my wife interviewed you for her book.
Yes. People from the Bronx.
Just Kids
book.
from the Bronx.
Yeah.
Your stories are wonderful in that book.
Oh, thank you.
So this guy,
That's
Matt.
a great plug for his wife's book.
Yeah, I just slipped that in.
That was brilliantly
Yeah.
put in.
So Matt Lerner, when he was a boy, was visiting a friend's house, and there was a child in the other room playing with some trains or cars or something, little toy cars. And he said, "Can I go in and play with him?" And his mother said, "Oh, he won't respond to you." The kid was on the autistic spectrum. So he went in and started mirroring the boy's actions. And then he did something that was the opposite of the action the kid noticed. So he sort of made contact with him with these motions. And he spent hours with him that day. And his mother remembers the kid saying goodbye, Matthew, when he left. So he had made contact with him. Now
That, at the time, was without precedent.
Yeah. Right. Now, but he had already, so he's got interested, Matt Lerner got interested in working, even though he was still in school, working with autistic kids. And the way they were taught, he was taught to teach them a certain way. And the way they were taught was, when this happens to you in life, do this. And when that happens to you in life, do that. So it was very proscribed. Individual encounters were described. And the kids hated being taught that. Who wants to be told how to behave in specific situations? He said they were so upset they were throwing things at him.
Plus, life is more complex.
Life is uncertain. So one night he was talking with friends who were actors, and they started talking about improvisation. And he said, "What's that like? What do you do there?" And they gave him some exercises he could try out with the kids. He started to work with the kids. Now the kids were getting used to all kinds of things that their imagination could supply them with. They loved it, and they started to make progress. And the boy he started with, who wouldn't look up from the cars on the floor, recently graduated from graduate school.
Whoa, okay. Okay, so there's hope even in cases where people have given up hope.
Yeah, and it works. You know what's interesting to me? It works at all levels. People who come in to be trained, we go to a university in some other part of the country or Australia, and the people who are very, very poor at communicating rise. The ones who are very, very good at communicating also get better. And we work with senior scientists, not just graduate students. And even they, who have been used to giving lectures all their lives and maybe entrenched in a certain way of working, they get excited by this ability to connect. And they get better.
I got two questions just to round this out before we go to audience Q&A. What do you do with scientists who represent fields that are heavy in jargon? Because my field, we are not
Yeah, you have very ordinary words.
We are simple people in astrophysics. Like I said, what do you call spots on the sun? Sunspots.
Sunspots.
See?
Very good.
Because that's how we roll, okay?
That's great.
No, a region of space, you fall in, you don't come out, light doesn't. Black hole. One syllable communication drives our lexicon. And on a level where half of our vocabulary has been taken into commerce, right? We have Milky Way candy bar, but there's no candy bar called deoxyribonucleic acid, okay? So I don't know that you'd want to buy that, right?
No.
So what do you do with scientists who are mired, laden with the lexicon of their field?
You know, I want to say a good word for jargon first. There's a good reason that jargon...
Don't say that sentence. That sentence makes...
No,
Put in a
I'll
good
tell
word
you-
for jargon?
No, I want to say a good
Oh,
word for jargon.
thank you.
The good word is that if you can say something that in 1 or 2 words that stands for 5 pages of explanation, and the other person knows exactly what you mean, like a colleague, somebody at the other end of the bench, why would you say 5 pages? Every profession has jargon. My profession is, if I said to you, you're on a movie set, and I said to you, go get me that Century and put a gobo on it, and bring me a big apple, a half apple. Just get me a half apple, and while you're at it, hurry up because this is the martini shot. Would you have any idea what I just said?
I would question your sanity, yes.
If you were a grip on a movie set, you would know exactly what I meant. The Century stand is a light stand, and it's got the word
I don't even know
Century.
what a grip is, right? Let's know whether a grip would know that.
Give me your
right.
hand. That's a grip.
That's a grip.
Which is a...
I picked up some of that from doing 13 hours of Cosmos,
you know.
but not all of it. Yeah.
But this is, by the way, what we just did is an example of another problem with jargon, is that ordinary English words are sometimes understood in different ways by different disciplines.
Yeah.
And there was a meeting between nanoscientists and neuroscientists a couple of years ago.
That sounds dangerous.
Where they were trying to cooperate to find new ways to understand the brain. They argued for hours over the one word, probe, P-R-O-B-E. They had different definitions for it, and they were upset that the other guy wanted to do a probe.
Oh, okay.
Which would have been even worse if there were a proctologist.
I know,
in the
that's
room.
what I'm saying. Yeah, probe, if someone says they want to probe you, just
Yeah.
say no first.
Thanks.
Right.
No, yeah, no thanks.
Let me finish out with just, tell me about Richard Feynman. In his life,
an
in your life.
intellectual hero of mine. Until I fell in love with Marie Curie, he was my guy.
Oh, really? Okay. So now you have a second love. All right.
Yeah.
But it's not just that you were a fan of his. You got totally into his situation.
Yeah, I did. I read books by him and about him, and thought there'd be a play in his
This is a
life.
brilliant physicist
Yeah.
of the 20th century,
A lot of
American
people-
physicist, Nobel laureate.
And many people feel he was second to Einstein.
In the century, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And many people know and love him. And he was a very colorful character. So I thought it would make a wonderful play. And I brought it to a producer in California, and we asked a writer to write it, Peter Parnell, who wrote a brilliant play. But we thought it would be on the stage in a year. It took 6 years to really get a piece that represented this amazingly complex man who did very complex work. And to prepare for it, I went to Caltech and I talked to...
Where he served as professor.
He was professor, and they were so loved there at Caltech. And I talked with Kip Thorne about glue-on tubes, and I really got into it, and I loved it. And I asked Brian Greene to give me some help. So...
He's name-dropping his physicists now.
Yeah. This was before they made me a fellow of the Physical Society.
The American Physical. Well, keep name-dropping. That's fine.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
fine.
science dropping.
So you in this play, you portrayed Richard Feynman.
Yeah, which was a wonderful experience. I just loved the chance to introduce him to maybe 50,000 people in the audience over the course of a year. And I hope that some of them would get the same curiosity that Feynman had and the same awe and wonder about the universe. You know what's interesting about communicating science? There was a study done, I think at the University of Pennsylvania, where they studied what were the most commonly emailed stories in the science section of the New York Times. You might think they were about health, about medicine, fitness, things that affect our bodies every day. The most emailed stories were about the wonder and awe found in confronting the universe. That sense of wonder and awe, we all have. We go out at night, we look at the stars.
You telling me? You forget who's interviewing you?
And he said I had comic timing.
Let me get to some of these questions. I didn't get to this, but someone who has already read your book is asking. In your book, you talk about the mirror exercise.
Yeah.
Can the two of you show us what it is?
Yeah, come on, get up.
Okay, I read it. Okay, so.
Okay. So now in this, do you know about the mirror exercise?
I read about it, so I
Okay,
can.
so I'll explain to those who don't know. The mirror exercise is a very basic improv exercise where I'm looking in the mirror and you're my mirror, and you have to be totally in sync with me. However I move, you can't let there be a lag because there's no lag with a mirror. It's exactly the same.
Except for the speed of light time delay.
If anybody notices that, we're dead.
That's a superhero person.
Yeah.
Now.
Okay, so here.
Okay.
Now,
He didn't blink that entire time, and I'm like.
That's good you were keeping up with it. Now, I did that deliberately because it's pretty clear that I'm leading and he's not following when I go too fast. What this is so good at implanting in people's minds as they begin to study communication is it's the leader's responsibility to make sure that the follower is following. It's not your job, it's my job to make sure. So if I'm trying to explain something complicated to you, it's my job to make it clear to you and help you follow me.
So if you do something that you knew I could not anticipate, that burden is on you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, but once I get your rhythms and you know I'm getting your rhythms, that gives you more latitude to do extra things in the mirror.
We were pretty good at that. You lead me now.
Okay.
A little fast, I can't follow.
Okay.
Now, let's see if we can get in motion and both of us lead. Neither one lead. Both of us follow each other.
Oh, okay.
We don't know who's leading, if
All
anybody's.
right.
Oh, forget it. There is.
By the way, one thing about a mirror.
Yeah.
You can actually try this at home. In a mirror, you can only kiss yourself on the lips. It's
a phenomenon I have observed many times.
It's a simple fact of optics.
I think Newton was the first to mention that.
You quote George Bernard Shaw in the book, in your opening pages. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place.
Yes, that's a wonderful saying, and it's often attributed to George Bernard Shaw, who probably never said it.
Now, why do you got to spoil it for us now?
No, but that's, I think, the essence of communication is we think he said it and he didn't say it. Somebody else said something like it, but it never made it to us. It's a little bit like Dawkins' meme. This is a little more rememberable. I'm a master communicator.
There's only one thing. There's only one thing that word, however garbled it was, could possibly mean.
That
means you're still successfully communicating.
Right. But it's more memorable. So like Dawkins' memes, it sticks in our minds and we attribute it to the person we think probably said it because he was so witty.
Yeah, he could have said it and surely would have said it, whether or not he did.
He would have. That's a good way to say it.
Yeah. I've got another one here. We kind of addressed this a little bit. What's an engaging way to communicate scientific ideas to children with disabilities? If I could take a quick crack at that.
Yeah, please do.
It's just, what matters for children is not how many ideas of science they can grasp. I think that's not even important. What matters is how to sustain curiosity, which all children have, which we agreed. And whatever is the disability, if a child is exposed to something fascinatingly scientific, Just let the curiosity roam that space. And don't fret over whether the idea has been accurately communicated, because if you develop a curious adult, all mysterious ideas will get investigated.
Yes.
Because you have an insatiable and burning desire to then learn. And most learning in anyone's life is going to be after you've left school anyway, provided you have retained curiosity for having done so.
When I got out of school, out of college, was to be able to use language and to think clearly, to think logically. Everything else I learned, except some of the classic ideas, was out of date by the time I got to be a little older.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Alan and Neil, what are your favorite podcasts? So what's your favorite podcast?
Yours.
Good answer.
And I love Science Friday, and I love Freakonomics. I enjoy that.
Freakonomics, okay,
yeah.
good. Malcolm Gladwell had a podcast that comes in and out, but what was that one called? A Revisionist History.
You know, I never heard that.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
sounds
He's
good.
got, I think, 10 episodes deposited with more to
Great.
come.
Yeah.
Check that out. I'm a big fan of Sam Harris, so I try to catch up with his podcast. Just sort of a deep thinker about all issues.
Yeah.
I don't always agree with him, but that's not what matters. What matters is your mind challenged?
You know, this sounds like a canned thing, but don't you enjoy hearing from people you don't agree with?
Oh, in fact, I was asked once by some book list, what books do I have on my shelf?
Yeah.
Or what am I reading now? And I listed some books that were very opposite what they had pigeonholed me to ascribe to. And they said, what? What? And I said, did you expect that I would only be reading books that affirm how I already think? Yeah. What fun is that? Yeah. Where does that ever leave you other than in the same place you started?
Sure.
So, yeah, I try to always read something that is different from
anything
I want to know or expect. Oh, okay.
Leave that woman alone.
How about this one? This one for you. Why do we think so many people are ignorant about science and don't care?
Yeah, that's the hard thing. I think the first thing we have to do as we try to communicate better and better with people who are not tuned into science is to find out how we can help them care. If they don't care, it doesn't matter how much we say to them that's hot stuff, they're not going to listen.
But if you can get more of the folks from the lab who are actually doing the work, who are committing their lives to the discoveries that journalists are talking about, this is firsthand access.
And you know what we do now? When we teach graduate students to be better communicators so they can practice, we send them to high schools so that the kids, the teenagers in the high school, see somebody not much older than them with a passion for learning about nature and the way they do. And the kids catch that enthusiasm. It's contagious.
Here's one. This does not have the proper nouns and verbs to be a question, but it is nonetheless a question.
Okay, I can't wait to hear this.
You ready?
Yeah.
Joe Biden, Alan Alda, 2020, question mark.
No, I don't know. Joe Biden, Arnold Vinnick, I think. Character I played who ran for the president. You know, I was so excited when I played Arnold Vinnick running for president that they had the election at the end of the show, and we had shot the show, and now I'm home watching it. And right up until the end of the program, I thought I still had a chance to win. I really wanted to win.
Time for just a couple more of these. This is a good one here. Do you think that texting and tweeting as ways of communication that don't require your voice or a sense of hearing has contributed to our inability to effectively communicate?
It might have. Who knows? I think people should study it. But one thing that I think I've noticed.
That's a great answer. Do you hear that? It's something that needs to be studied.
And I said I don't know, which you don't hear much.
No. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, right. Here I am up here. I should know everything. One thing I think I've noticed is that even when we have these truncated messages in texting and email, there's still the desire, there's still the wondering what's going on in the mind of the person reading this. We still wonder if what we said, there's this little flash of a moment when we get to the end of a couple of phrases. We think, is that going over the way I mean it to? And that's why we use smileys and emoji. There is still this vestigial interest in what's going on in the person's head that we're trying to communicate with. And that's what we have to build on. But we all have a smidgen of it at the very least.
Okay, last question here.
Better be good.
Okay. This is related, but maybe we can take it in a slightly different tack. In this age of instant online contact, are we losing anything interpersonally? Because this book is all about interpersonal contact.
Well, I will take it in a slightly different direction. It's based on personal contact, but what the personal contact is supposed to give you, for instance, the look on my face, what that's supposed to give you is insight into what I'm going through so you can adjust how you talk to me when you're trying to communicate.
But I have to be seeing you when this happens.
Not necessarily, I believe. I believe that what we found is that once you get used to figuring out what a person, where you get used to wondering what the person is thinking as you communicate with them. Even when you write, when you put down a sentence, you've done something to the person, to the reader's brain. You can make an estimate of where that person is as a result of that sentence, and that gives you an idea of where to start the next sentence. And I did that all through writing the book. I almost don't write anything now, even emails, without thinking about how it's getting into the other person's head. So the person doesn't have to be physically in front of you. They can be distant in time and space. You don't know when they'll read it. You're not even sure who's going to read it, but you have a general idea of who the reader will probably be. And you can judge based on the expectations the person probably has about what ought to be in a sentence. There's a guy called George Gopin who was very, very good at this. And he thinks we have expectations that in the beginning of the sentence should be what the sentence is going to be about, not halfway through. That kind of makes sense. Something should happen soon after that. To me, it's like the hero of the sentence has to do something, has to take some action pretty quickly. The hero has to come in soon. Otherwise, the play won't be about Hamlet. You'll think it's about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And he's got to do something. Then the punchline, like the end of a joke, comes at the end of the sentence. The thing that is something emphatic, the emphasis of the sentence. And then the next sentence has to somehow pick up where you left off in the previous one, so the person reading it is still with you. You want to keep them with you and take them down a path. So I think it works for reading too, writing. Yes?
Alan, your book reeks of that.
My book. He means that in a good way.
Yes, I do. Ladies and gentlemen, this book is available for sale in the lobby, and join me in thanking Alan Alda.
Thank you so much.